Good evening, welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Leeson here, today's top stories. At least 45 people have died in a stampede during a religious festival in Israel. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's personal phone number has been available online for 15 years, raising security concerns. And the Tories increase their lead over Labour despite the current row over the Prime Minister's flat refurbishment. A stampede at a religious festival attended by tens of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews in northern Israel killed at least 45 people on Friday. It's one of the country's deadliest civilian disasters.
Over 40 people were crushed to death at a crowded religious festival in Israel on Friday. The crush occurred as tens of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews thronged to the tomb of a 2nd century sage for annual commemorations. Witnesses say people were suffocated or trampled in a tightly packed passageway. One witness recalled the moment.
I was there exactly when it happened, down there on the side. It started when a few paramedics started to run, and then there was some kind of mess. Police screaming, a big mess. And after half an hour it looked like a scene of a suicide bombing attack. Numerous people coming out of there in stretchers.
Medics say over 150 people had been injured. The stampede appears to have been in the men's section of the gender-segregated festival. Witnesses say casualties include children. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the site on Mount Meron in North Israel. And Boris Johnson, along with other foreign leaders and diplomats, sent condolences. The event was one of the largest gatherings in Israel since the outbreak of the pandemic 1 year ago. A police spokesman says overall capacity at Mount Meron was similar to previous years, but that this time some areas were partitioned off as a COVID-19 precaution. Israeli media say that may have created unexpected choke points in foot traffic.
Opposition leader Sir Keir Starmer weighed in on reports that Boris Johnson's mobile number has been freely available on the internet for the last 15 years. The Labour leader was taking a tour of a boxing gym today in Hull.
It is a security risk, and I think that's been clear from this morning, and that's why the Prime Minister was warned about it.
It emerged on Thursday that a contact number for Johnson was listed in a press release in 2006, when he was still shadow higher education minister. According to reports, this document was still available on the internet this year. But Chancellor Rishi Sunak says as far as he knows, all security protocols have been followed. He added, part of what makes a Prime Minister special is that he is an incredibly approachable individual. And in other news, the Conservative Party is doing well in the polls despite the controversy over the refurbishment of the Prime Minister's flat and allegations of sleaze. A YouGov poll for The Times found the Conservatives are on 44%, the same as last week. Labour dropped 1 point to 33%. Among working-class voters, Conservatives have a 19-point lead. Johnson has been facing growing scrutiny over refurbishments of his Downing Street flat and how they were paid for. A third formal investigation was announced yesterday by the Parliamentary Standards Commission. Johnson yesterday denied any wrongdoing and dismissed concerns. The number of vacant UK retail stores has increased in the first 3 months of 2021 compared to the last quarter of 2020. A retail industry body says that 1 in 7 stores are now empty. NTD's Neil Wadrow has the story.
The British Retail Consortium is saying that the vacancy rate has risen by almost 2% compared to the same period a year ago. This marks 3 years of increasing vacancies. Its CEO, Helen Dickinson, says the forced closure of thousands of shops during the first quarter of 2021 has exacerbated already difficult conditions for the retail industry. It estimates there are around 5,000 fewer stores now since the start of the pandemic. The northeast of England is suffering the worst, with 19.3% of retail units empty, compared to 10.7% for Greater London. Shopping centres have been hit too. The Director of Retail and Strategic Partnerships of the local data company says that shopping centres generally have a lower proportion of what is deemed essential retail. Many of them were forced to close for long spells during lockdowns. The other types of retail they offer, such as fashion, department stores and casual dining, are also in decline, with over 12% of units lying empty for a year or more.
Debenhams will be closing all of its stores from next month. Some of John Lewis's won't be reopening even after restrictions are lifted. The pandemic, with repeated lockdowns, has caused further damage to the high street. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, London.
As a result of pandemic restrictions, many firms are looking to cut back on office sizes. New research finds almost 2/3 of company bosses plan to allow staff to work remotely between 1 and 4 days a week. NTD's Jane Well has more.
New research says that many companies are planning to go hybrid or splitting time between the home and office.
2 out of 3 bosses plan to allow their staff to work from home for part of the week. That's according to a survey of 600 bosses by the Institute of Directors. Business leaders are split on whether it's more or less productive to work from home.
1 in 5 say they aren't planning to have any remote working, while 1 in 10 is looking to work entirely from home. Some say the pandemic restrictions have accelerated a shift to home working that already existed. The capital's central office district, the City of London, is looking to convert their empty office spaces into homes. As restrictions start to ease, business leaders are working out the best way to move forward. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
You can remote control a TV, a toy car and a drone, but now at London City Airport, air traffic is fully controlled remotely. This approach might revolutionise the industry.
London City Airport is the world's first major international airport using a remote air traffic control system. Rising over the terminal building, the old control tower with its panoramic windows is deserted. The controllers are now working in Hampshire, more than 70 miles away from the airport.
The existing air traffic control tower was over 30 years old and required some significant investment to upgrade it. We also have implemented some new aircraft stands and we needed to change the location of the air traffic control tower. So we've moved location.
A 50-metre tall digital control tower was built at the airport, featuring 14 high-definition cameras and 2 cameras able to pan, tilt and zoom. Controllers can have a panoramic view of the runway through 14 screens, together with radar data, weather data and call sign of the aircraft.
Never have to look behind them, never have to use binoculars. You know, all of those things are now provided by the new digital cameras.
The tower has metal spikes on top to protect its cameras from birds. Each camera has a self-cleaning mechanism to stop insects and debris from blurring the lenses.
Fundamentally, the job hasn't changed. It's still about the controller's eyes finding the aircraft and monitoring it visually. The difference is we're using screens instead of windows.
The live sound of the airport is piped into the new control centre. Controllers can hear the plane's engines roaring into life and the reverse thrust of touchdown. City Airport says it started using its digital air traffic control tower in January. And so far it has worked seamlessly. The images they produce travel down multiple high-speed fibre links to the new remote control centre.
So are there risks? Well, we think we've got all the risks well covered. So cybersecurity is well covered, for example.
The new remote tower cost less than £20 million to design and build. City Airport says it's not about saving money, but about safety and efficiency. It can allow the airport to handle 45 plane movements per hour, up from 40 in 2019. Astil says it can revolutionise the way airport services are delivered.
It allows us to reproduce what we do today. It allows us to further enhance that job, and potentially it allows us to group together different airports in one place and present different ways of efficiently delivering the service to the airport customers.
City Airport's Chief Operating Officer says their new tower has attracted interest from big airports, including Heathrow. She says the remote air traffic controllers will become more common in the future.
Hong Kong pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong and 3 others have pleaded guilty today. Their crime? Participating in a vigil to commemorate the Tiananmen Square massacre last year. The event had been banned by police.
Hong Kong pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong and another 3 people pleaded guilty of participating in an illegal assembly on June the 4th last year. The event was to commemorate the 1989 crackdown on protesters in and around Beijing's Tiananmen Square. Police banned the vigil for the first time in Hong Kong, citing pandemic restrictions on group gatherings. All demonstrations were banned for the same reason. Still, tens of thousands of people lit candles across the city. The event was largely peaceful, except a brief skirmish with riot police in one neighborhood. Wong is already in prison for organizing an unauthorized assembly during the March pro-democracy protests in 2019. The other activists who pleaded guilty were Lester Sean, Janelle Liang, and Tiffany Yuan. Another activist asked for an adjournment, and 19 more are facing similar charges. The June 4th anniversary struck an especially sensitive nerve in the former British colony last year. It fell just as Beijing prepared to introduce a new security law. The law punishes anything China sees as subversion, secession, terrorism, or collusion with foreign forces, with up to life in prison. This year, the event is particularly awkward for Beijing, which celebrates the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party. The vigil is expected to be banned.
Northern Ireland is taking a major stride out of lockdown. Many hospitality and retail outlets reopened their doors after 4 months of closure. Publicans, cafe owners and restaurateurs are now able to trade outdoors. Outside popular retail outlets such as Primark in Belfast, long queues formed from early morning on Friday. Northern Ireland's Economy Minister Diane Dodds says the delayed High Street voucher scheme is set to start at the end of the summer. Every adult will then be able to get a £100 prepaid card to spend in the local retail sector. Still to come, London will have its first Park in the Sky. Our NTD reporter takes us on a unique tour in Camden. That and more when we return.